So, Dad, how did you start tournaments, competitions? How did that come about?
Um, well, the AKF, well, FACO it was then, FACO, um, it was really the only body that held competitions. And sometimes clubs used to go and train with each other more then than they ever did now. And so we'd have Rembu Khan would come and visit us and we'd visit them. And we went to JKA and they might have come to us at some stage. I can't remember. But so there wasn't really, the competitions were, first ones that I had, no gloves, no groin guard, no mouth guard, no shin guards, nothing like that. And,
Real
and
warrior.
not a real lot of good control either. But so I'm busting to tell you this. My first and only win in a kata competition was my first one. We
Ah,
had, it was just an inter, I think it was with Laurie Van's club. And that's when they used to call themselves the YMCA. I can't, and they used to sing that song, that YMCA thing. And, it was a team thing and we did Pinan Gordon and I think they did Sun Chin or something like that. And we ended up winning it. So that was good fun.
so
So I
no,
can't,
no individual cutter wings.
not then. No, me, no, never, never. I I wasn't a cutter person, and my training was at home was always based around kumite. So excuse me, I got a cough. So and I was sort of hamstrung by the fact that I knew kata meant more than what people were saying then. And I knew that the applications you read in the books by Japanese and others, was pretty much rubbish because I had been in a few punch ups, and they didn't go anything like the applications to karate kata. So I always had that problem, and I really wanted to understand kata. And it wasn't like I wanted to know all these different applications, um, different things to do. I just wanted to understand what the purpose of kata was. And after another 30 years or something, I sort of started to get an idea of it. But, that was my main thing at that time. But in the kumite, I used to just about every night after training, you guys would be in bed and I'd be out in the hallway with a big mirror and I'd practice my kicks, punches and various sneaky ways of being able to get in and score on someone.
Mm.
So in the competitions, I did very well. As a blue belt, even as a blue belt, John and Graham were together at one stage, both under what was the name then? Sador Khan, I think we were calling ourselves. They had a big split up later on after that, and I remember Graham brought down 3 or 4 guys that were going for black belt, and John had 3 or 4 going for black belt, and John asked me as a blue belt to go in and do the sparring with them, and of course, not being really bright at that stage, still a really young man. I thought I really had to do my best and try and shine against these brown belts going for black belt, and one guy was a first dan going for a second dan. I won't mention his name, but anyway, I gave a couple of them a real flogging, and and I know that's modest of me.
Yeah.
And the guy going for second dan, by the time I got to spar with him, I could see that he was really, really worked up. And I remember he did a roundhouse kick against me and I blocked it, grabbed his leg, and then he spun and tried to kick me with the other leg. So I just swung him and let him go. He slid across the floor into the chairs on the side. It wasn't very pretty and I was in a bit of trouble. But But yeah, no, so the kumite really suited me, and although although when you step into the ring, you know yourself. Before you step into the ring, you're a bit nervy and keyed up. But whenever I stepped in the ring, I was okay. As soon as the Hachime and away I went, I was fine. So I did enjoy it.
And you won several state and national titles as well in New
Yeah,
Zealand.
yeah. I won. I think the first thing I won was. I think I got to I was in the final four or final eight or something in a Queensland Championship in 1976. It must have been, but I got a thumb in the eye and I couldn't. I had to withdraw, and then I made the Queensland team in '76. So what was I? 25. I went down to Sydney, and I was in the draw. I had some other guy down there, and then they changed the draw just before we were due to go on, and suddenly, yeah, you know this, you've seen this 100 times, haven't you? They changed the draw.
Times, yeah, yeah.
Someone must have told them that Bob McMahon wasn't too bad in Kumite, and suddenly I had the New South Wales champion, a guy whose name is John Williams, and we're Facebook friends together. So he was about 6'6" or 6'7", solid, good athletic, solid body. And when John came over and said, "Oh, they've changed the draw, and you've got this guy, he's the New South Wales champion, first up," I went, "My God, you know." And when I saw him, do you remember the old Fighting Arts magazine?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this guy, he was in that magazine. There was an article on him winning the state championships, and I'd read it, so that's how I knew who he was.
Yeah.
And I remembered in it, he foot swept this guy because he had legs like bloody tree trunks. He foot swept this guy, and the other way around. He got foot swept, sorry, and he was on the ground, and this guy, when he went to punch him, he did a roundhouse kick off the floor and in the side of the guy's face. And I remember thinking to myself, I must remember that. That's pretty good, you know. He got a full point and won the match. And back in the day when I was fighting this guy, I remember he used to do spinning back kick. And I remember he did this spinning back kick, and I thought, if that even hits my arm, it's going to break it. And I raced backwards. But I felt like I'd gone about 20 foot backwards when I hadn't. But anyway, I did score on him with a reverse punch or something, and then he foot swept me, and that's why I know he has legs like tree trunks. It bloody hurt, and I hit the ground, and that picture of that what he did went through my mind, and as he came down to punch me in the head, I just flipped over and kicked him in the head with a roundhouse kick, and won the match. So, you know, what do you call it? It's one of those truth is stranger than fiction. And I went on to, I ended up getting third place, I think. And I think I probably could have done a little bit better, except I got a little bit overwhelmed when I was in the top four.
So you beat him?
Yeah. He never scored on me. And then I beat a few of the Seikyukan guys and a couple of other guys down there that were sort of well known. I was a nobody, absolute nobody. And then I think I fought Danny Allaby, and Danny had been, he'd been my sort of karate idol in a lot of ways, you know, and he was better than me. He was better than me, more experienced, better karateka, real strong. And I tried really hard against him, but I think he just had it all over me in bravado. And then I fought Brian Mackey for third place, and although I didn't really know who Brian Mackey was, I just knew him. I'd seen him in magazines, and he'd represented Australia in the first ever team. And I gave him a bit of a worrying time, but he beat me clearly, and we became friends after that. And he's on my Facebook page, and we still talk today.
Yeah. Still,
So, you
still
know,
involved in karate?
sorry?
Roy Mackey's still involved in karate?
Oh yeah. He's an eighth dan over there in Perth, and he's got a really big school. And him and Branko Bratic sort of are the biggest big names over there. Branko's still a good friend.
And you fought Branko?
Never fought Branko. Never fought Branko.
Branko.
No.
Oh, okay.
Never fought him, but you know, saw him at competitions and stuff. Well, he was a heavyweight, and I was a light heavyweight,
Oh, yeah.
and the idea of an open wasn't started a little bit later. So, but in so where did I go after that? In '77, there was a big political fallout in the FACO, and there was no Australian championship. I think we had a Queensland championship, and I think I might have got second in that. And I think it was Tom Trubshaw from Koshinkan that beat me, big strong Tom.
Mm.
And then in 1977, we went over to New Zealand, and that's right. That's why I didn't fight in the Nationals. We went to New Zealand in 1977, and we fought in a thing which was a sort of a. There was two different associations over there, organisations. There was the Federation of New Zealand, Karate Federation New Zealand, and then there was the JKA Association. But in that year, they both joined together to have a national championship.
Okay.
And John Halpin took a group over from Koshinkan, which included myself and Dave Shaw and Brendan Gorman and James O'Connor and a few guys like that. And also from Rimbu Khan, it was Paul Hallis, Ross Roberts, and a few others like that. And from Graham Kelleher's club, there was Alan Todd, Cole Williams or something or other, another really big, tall 6'6". And so we fought in that, and I ended up winning the Kumite, and Dave Shaw came second. In the teams, we got second in the teams. And there were some very wild New Zealanders over there, some big Maori boys who were frightening to look at.
Yeah.
But it was fun. We all enjoyed it.
So what year did you win your first national title?
79.
79?
Yeah, so 78, there was the big political stoush, and then there was no Australian championships. And then in 1979, I won the light heavyweight, which was the under 80, and I won the open. So all the best of the winners, second place getters, I think, of the four different divisions went in, and I won that.
You won both?
I won both, yeah.
Excellent.
In a nutshell, when I left Koshinkan, John and I just weren't getting along. It seemed to be there was some problem, you know, and God knows what it all was, but we were annoying each other, and
sounds like a marriage.
Hey.
It sounds like a happy marriage.
Yeah, well, it was sort of like, you know, it'd been a long time, and I had my own ideas on things, and I suppose underlining it all was the fact that I was really interested in older karate and the application of the kata. John had some ideas on it, but at that time nobody knew what the kata meant, and you know, that sort of drove me a bit crazy. And I know John and I had a discussion. John was showing us what he thought applications to Pinan Nidan. We still called it Pinan in those days.
Yep.
And I said, that used to be a front kick, not a side kick. And he just looked at me, and I said it like it was common knowledge, because I actually thought it would have been. It was in a couple of books. And I think that little point was the turning point. And so anyway, we really didn't see eye to eye after that. And I did have a club down in Peter Fernie was in Melbourne, and John sort of said to me, he said, "You go down there to teach him," and that he said, "That's a Seikyukan club, really?" And I said, "Yeah, it's a Seikyukan club." But the accusation was that I was trying to build an organisation within an organisation, which wasn't right. And John admitted years later that he was wrong about that. And so it just sort of got that bad that when John rang up, your mother wouldn't pick up the phone. You know, we used to sort of argue a bit. And so I went and saw him. It was right at the end of '89. And I went and saw John, and 88, I should say. And I said to John, "Look, we're not getting on anymore." I said, "I think I'll leave." And he said, "All right, if that's what you want to do." And we had been like best friends all those years. And I said, "Well," I put my hand out to shake hands and go, and he didn't want to shake my hand. So that was it. And we didn't get on again for a long, long time, if ever.
Mm. Yeah, I remember that time as a kid.
Do you?
Wasn't the greatest time. However, did enable you to start the Australian Karate Academy,
Yeah.
and then start learning more about the older style of karate, and researching into why we do this and why we do that.
Yep. And weapons.
Big pardon?
And weapons. We got stuck into weapons too then.
Yeah. So you didn't do any kobudo in Seikyukan?
Yes, I learnt a bow cutter. The name escapes me at the moment, but it was okay. And also a sai cutter, which I retaught myself later on. But they were sort of a little bit interested in that. It wasn't like I had a lot of good mates in there, but in the karate clubs, if you leave and you go to another club, and we've seen it in our lifetime, haven't we? Lots of times, it's sort of like you've deserted ship or something, and you become a traitor, even if it was a mutual thing, and you haven't actually, you didn't steal any money or take students with you or whatever. It's a funny old thing. It's a real cult. It used to be a real cult, karate, and I really, and my interest, as you say, was really in karate and understanding karate, and especially kata. And I really wasn't so interested in the competitions because I got all the sparring I wanted to in the club. So I wasn't a glory hound at all. And I decided, I think I was 35 or 36, but 1986, I'd had a couple of years off. And in 1986, John Halpin asked me to go back in and go in the Queensland and the nationals. And I can't remember. I might have won I think I won the Queensland championships in my weight division, and then I went to the nationals and I got an equal third then. But yeah, I think that's how it worked out. But I was 35 turning 36, I think. And I was feeling it, and I just had different interests.
Yeah. So how did you start researching what kata meant? Where did that lead you? Because that's
okay. Well, I bought every magazine. I bought every magazine that came out, even the what we thought were the useless ones. And I bought every book that I could possibly get. And I started buying some Chinese, like some kung fu books and things like that. Chin Na was a real eye opener for me.
I think I have that book at home.
Yeah, you've got that. Yeah, you've read it a few times, haven't you?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think it's called The Analysis of Chin Na.
Yeah, and but you see all those locks and different things in there. You can see your karate come to life in it.
Yep.
So that was helpful. I mean, what wasn't helpful, which you I don't know whether you sort of experienced that in your in your karate, but there was so much, use a modern term, fake news within other karate groups that are continually confusing you. And then they started up the, well, I'll move on to George Dillman. Will we move on to George Dillman?
Talking about fake news.
Yeah. Well, you know, the George Dillman had a guy that had from Australia that had gone over and trained with him, and I suspect he's only just been to a seminar with him, or you know, a week of training or whatever like that. But there was an article about him in one of the fake, what do you call that old one, AFA, Australian Fighting Arts, and it sounded interesting. So by then I'd had Mel Turner and John from Bundaberg, and I had a fair few clubs that had joined up with us, and I tried to work out applications for myself, and those still pretty basic. And anyway, I decided I'd go down, and I got in touch with this guy, and he welcomed me. He said, "Come down." He said, "Come and stay at my place for the night if you like." Well, you know, we weren't rich back then, as you'd remember. So I flew down and stayed at his place and trained with him in the afternoon. And he showed me, you know, what he'd sort of picked up. And it was really only little things such as stance, why you do this with a stance and that, and maybe one arm bar or something. And but it was like a revelation in a sense. Some of the things that I had been thinking were what I thought pretty much confirmed. And I sort of realised, because I was still doing Shotokan then, and I sort of realised finally that, you know, Shotokan wasn't really going to supply the answers that I was looking for. So that started me, you know, looking into the older karate more and more. And I didn't think that Dillman's thing was quite right, but I knew they were further down the track. And so when I came, I remember that Saturday night, I trained with him on the Saturday afternoon. I slept on, I think I just slept on a couch out in the lounge or somewhere that night, but I really had trouble getting to sleep because I was really conflicted. So here I'd been training for 28 years or whatever it was. And I really felt like I didn't know anything again, you know, that feeling of, oh, damn, you know, what will I do? So I thought, well, I go back, you know, quit my style, you know, who am I going to go to? I didn't want to go to Dillman. And so I was really confused for a while there. And so then I started, you know, looking into things deeper. And I think by then the internet came along. Well, the internet was the greatest joy in my life, because I ended up starting a thing called, what was it? The Shoto discussion group. And I had something like 300 members on this discussion page. And they were all Shotokan guys from all over the world. And there was a few in Japan and, you know, in America and just everywhere, you know, France, all sorts of things. And so anyway, we started discussing our views. And I remember there's a lot of guys from down in Sydney and Melbourne and, you know, Perth and whatever. And we'd never ever had the chance to talk. So we used to go through this thing. And in those days, one of the big things was, you know, say in Kenkudai or anything with that sort of four corner stuff, that, you know, you had an enemy in front who'd attack you with a lunge punch, you do an upward block and a reverse punch, and then a guy would attack you from behind and you'd block and do a side kick into him or something, and then another guy on the left, and meanwhile, another guy's waiting patiently for his turn. And most people believed that was really the application of the kata. That was it. You were surrounded by four enemies. Kenkudai in particular, or Kusanku, or Koshinkan, whatever name you use for it, that they talk about that as night fighting under the moon, and other guys said it was for training against 12 enemies or some bloody thing. There was a whole lot of this sort of stuff going on, and I used to say on that on the discussion group, I used to say, it's just garbage. You know, it's not right. You're not going to be attacked by someone from the left while the guy on the right of where you're standing comes up later. And so we used to discuss our, you know, what we thought. And when a guy came on, especially a Shotokan instructor came on, there was always this conflict straight up about the cutter applications. And so anyway, you know, we really talk things out a lot. We got guys on there that weren't from Shotokan as well. At one stage there of about 30 top, you know, high grade, which was over 5th dan then, I suppose, instructors, I had access to them through their students. So if I wanted to know what a move was or an application was for something or other, I would get an answer within 24 hours, often within 12 hours. And that was fantastic. And we all went along in leaps and bounds. We really did. And we'd share information and that. And the only downside was about half of the membership quit Shotokan. So that was all blamed on me at that time. But it was a fantastic resource, and it was like, you know, we were at the start of something big. And I think I got to meet Joe Swift and Mario McKenna. You know, they somehow found their way onto that list, and Vince Chu, another guy from the States. And we ended up, we started the Shoto Journal, and I used to produce that.
Yep.
And it was just, I've still got them today. And when I look at what we were writing in there, some of it was really, really advanced.
Yep.
And some of it was, we'd consider it pretty low level now. But that was fantastic. And then that gave me more contacts. And so...
I remember as a kid, you know, every weekend, you know, you'd be talking to somebody like Vince Morris.
Yeah.
Patrick McCarthy would be over at our house with him with his kids, and you know, you'd be talking to guys like Joe Swift, Mario McKenna, and you'd be sitting in your office for 10 hours a day just talking about karate.
Yep.
And you know, I remember when I used to sit down there and read a karate book, and you'd be talking to somebody about karate.
Yeah.
I remember those days. And I remember it'd be, Cheyne, let me just try something out on you. So you need to try a joint lock or a throw or a pressure point or a vital point, and then you go back and sit down and write, yeah, it worked, or, you know, nothing like that. So I remember that growing up.
I remember all the crying.
I remember the crying too. Who do you think, who was your biggest influence in the development of understanding more about the older karate? Or was there a few?
Yeah, there's a few. We'll say Vince Morris, for example. Vince was a really solid, tough guy. You know, he'd be a hard man to put down in any fight. He's really a tough pommy. He's your real, you know, pommy type. His applications were brutal and fairly simple in the sense that direct, more direct. His history and stuff was really taken from the Shotokan books and stuff, and he'd read other things, and he was trying hard too. But he was in the same position as me. He was in England with a Japanese head instructor who didn't want to teach them anything, or maybe he didn't know himself. But you know, he was good. We got along pretty well. But then, so he came out and I part sponsored him, and he had about a week at our place, and he was a nice guy. We got on well. Then John Halpin brought Patrick McCarthy out to Australia to be the head of a college that John wanted to run. And so so Patrick was over there. Patrick wasn't really allowed to consort with me. I like consort, it's a good word, isn't it? And so anyway, we talked on the telephone a bit and met up and had a coffee and stuff. And he's a really nice chap, Patrick. And so him and John had a big bust up then, and I sponsored Patrick to come and teach at our dojo. And I think that went on for about 2 years, didn't it? You trained with him a fair bit when we were over there in the Dungeon Dojo.
Yep.
And his take on history was really good. And so I learned a real lot from Patrick. But in the applications and stuff, Patrick had a pretty good knowledge of MMA and jiu-jitsu, and he'd trained with some Chinese groups, I think, when he was in Canada. So he had a pretty good idea of applications which involved joint locks and whatever. But although he trained, he said Kinjo Hiroshi was his teacher. You know, I don't think he didn't train with him as a student. He trained with him as a higher grade instructor. He trained Patrick's sensei. Was a guy who had trained under Kinjo Hiroshi, so that was their connection. So anyway, Patrick had sort of learned a bit from him. So Patrick had a sort of a very big knowledge of a lot of things. But when and so, you know, I did learn a lot from Patrick. We had about 3 years together, and then our time was up as well. You know, you can't have, you know, 2 instructors in the dojo sort of thing, and you know, you just your life of your friendship and collaboration sort of comes to an end at some stage, and so we sort of parted company, and then on the internet of all places, I think it was Jay Swift actually that sent me an email one day or a message or something, and he said, "Hey Bob, there's this guy on that's got a website. He says things like what you say about Shotokan," and he said he sort of says that the Japanese don't know what they're talking about in regard to the history of karate and the applications.
Like a moth to a flame.
yeah. And he said, I think you should get in touch with him and go and have a look at his page and have a yarn to him. So I did, and Matani was a troublemaker, and so was I. So as you know, so we did get on really well, and I had done all the physical training. I think by that stage I knew, and when I say I knew, I don't mean that knew it inside out, but I had tried at least I could probably do. I think I stood there one day and I did something like 98 kata or something, not like a kata performance, but and some of them one was 11 versions of Basai Dai and about 8 versions of Hangetsu or Seisan or what do you want to call it, and Pinan Heian, and just all these kata that I'd learned trying to pick out the bones of what karate was. And if you remember, we went through that stage in the dojo when all the members were they were sort of complaining but loving it when I kept changing cutter.
I,
learned,
I remember that. Yep, it was
I'd
this
learned,
week going to do it with our left leg forward.
but I'd learn a new version of a cutter, and I'd think, Jesus, that one move in there would be great in ours. And so I remember Dennis and them used to cry, you know.
Dennis
Anyway,
still cries about it.
yeah. So anyway, I started talking to Matani, and he straightened me out. I got a lot of my own back. He really used to give it to me. You know, he used to tell me something was absurd that I said, and you guys think this all the time. And you know, it was 12 months of a really hard slog, and what he was trying to do was he was really trying to reshape me. You know, he told me I was the nail that stuck up, and he was the hammer that was going to knock it down, and all this sort of stuff. And which he did too. He really knocked any ego out of me, because I did think I knew a bit then, I know. And so anyway, in that 12 months, I learnt more than the previous 30 odd years. And it was he was able to sort of bring it all together for me. And it wasn't the secret of it all, really, isn't the techniques and stuff itself. It's the context around it. And for example, he said to me, karate comes from the uncles in the neighborhood in Okinawa. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, no police station, no phone. Somebody attack you near your house or want to break in, just you. Unless it was a little township or something, no neighbours. So he said, to defend yourself, what would you do? And I said, well, I don't know. And he said, well, you pick up any tool around the house that could be used as a weapon. And he said, and you'd hit people with that if you had to. And he said, and that is kobudo. And I'd say to him, is that how kobudo started? And he said, probably. But I said, what about kobudo, kata and that? And he said, I don't know. Oh, you don't know? He said, no. He said, maybe dance, but maybe after karate, kata. He said, I don't know. I went, oh. And but some things he did know, and he wouldn't tell me, you know. But it was very interesting, and then he started to give me hints and stuff. And what he said to me, probably the most significant thing he said to me was, you know, Bob, you really have to work it out for yourself. And he said the good teacher gives hints and doesn't teach at all. But of course, you need to have an idea of, you know, what the basic techniques mean. So then we brought him out to Australia. And it all fitted into, or made sense, didn't it? And
I remember, yeah, it was, I think 2001, I think we brought him out.
Yeah.
And he was here for a week. And I remember we were training with him.
Yeah, only a week.
Yeah, in the morning, and then in the afternoon and at night. I was maybe 19 or 20. Yep. And we immediately changed. When he left, we immediately changed our karate and our kata. No discussion needed.
No, that's right. Well, I was going to say there was no family meeting. There was no club meeting, no dojo talk. But what we did, and I realised it later, was we really didn't change our karate as such. We just grasped his concepts, and his concepts and the what do you call it? And the sort of background, the historical background, it all fitted in. So you needed to know more than just, you know, what the movement was. So, for example, I thought Pinar Nidan, I still think this, I think Pinar Nidan is the most significant kata for students grasping, the essence, for want of a better word, of kata and stuff. It's, you turn to the left, escape a grip. What if he's grabbed you with the other hand? You can escape that. And then, what do they call that punch? Is it movement punch, motion punch?
Momentum.
Oh, momentum, that's right. And that changed us completely, didn't it?
It did, yeah. The delivery of the punch, the principles of the body mechanics and body movement as well, I think is what sort of separated what he was teaching, or what he's teaching, and what we were doing, and what everybody else was doing. Yeah, we just haven't looked back since.
Do you remember, Bud, the first time you saw
yes.
the two boys doing their cut?
Yeah, Rusey and I'm friends with him on Facebook.
Masumi?
Masumi, yeah. I remember watching their cutter, and we were all like, whoa, they're so fast.
Well, me and Mum, I swear this is true, me and Mum was standing up on the side, and they did, I don't know, about 5 kata, but I think they did Pinan Nidan first. And halfway through their kata, Mum and I just turned and looked at each other, and both of us had our mouth open. We sort of went, just the speed of it. Today, when I look at it, it's not as fast and it's not as fantastic as it was way back then, when you'd never seen that before. But it was so fast, and you knew it was right, didn't you? You just knew that it was right. And I had Shotokan people and all sorts of people from everywhere come up for his seminars, because I wanted to, we didn't know what was going to happen in the future, but I wanted to promote him and make a bit of money for him. And in the end, he wouldn't take anything. And I think he paid his own airfare out, wouldn't let us pay the airfare. And I went and paid his fare at the hotel in town, paid for their accommodation and stuff, and we took him out for meals a fair bit. But he was so different to the other instructors that we'd had over, that you'd have to work out a fee with them and try and get enough out of the students and seminars to pay for it all, because we were all about karate then and not about money, weren't we, Bud?
Yep. Yeah. We still are.
Yeah, well, that's right.
Still are, all about the karate. So just wrapping everything up, after more than 50 years involved in karate and Kobudo too, what's the secret of kata? What's the secret of karate? Is there one secret of karate, or is there one little bit of advice you can give to somebody?
Well, everything depends on your purpose for training in karate. So if you're training in karate for the modern karate, then you've got to work out what your goals are and work towards that goal. You can't. My problem in the early years was it was such a wide spectrum of different things that were there, all these different styles, all these different messages coming from people and books and whatever. That was the hardest part, was sorting through all of that. The secret of karate is, if it's for self-defense, you need 3 or 4 techniques, and you need to be superbly fit and strong. Are you going to maintain that every day of your life for 50 odd years? No, you get tired. The body breaks down a bit. You get illnesses and disease, and you break things and all of that. I think that competition is for when you're young and about 35, like you gave it away around at 35, I think. I think that's about the right time. Um, and you learn from teaching. You can't really just be a student and understand karate. I don't think. I think when you're teaching, you pick up more things in having to explain it to somebody. And how many times does some student ask you a question about something and you sort of think, never actually thought about that much before, and you go away and dwell on it and find the answer. And you go back and tell the person they weren't that interested anyway. So, yeah, I think the secret is, like in life itself, it's persistence, sorting out your goal, and then, having a plan to get there. Can I tell you one of my best experiences in karate, called Budo? The demonstration that you and I did with the Kumi bow at Coffs Harbour.
Yes.
I look back at that as one of the highlights of my karate career.
Yeah.
Because we did it so well, modestly again, and it felt great on the day, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, yep.
Well, it wasn't actually planned, but I got out there and I thought, we've got to do this at 100% to make it good. And I was confident in you and myself, and we did a really good job of that. So that was good.
Bow versus bow.
Yep, bow versus bow, and full pelt.
It was full pelt, and there was no mouth guard, no head protection, nothing.
No groin guard.
No groin guards, no.
No throat guard.
But we'd been practicing that for 5 years.
Yeah, but not that same routine together. But we, because we really devoted a lot of time to Corbuto, didn't we? For over a long period of time, I worked out one day how many kata we knew in all the different things. It was like 30 or something.
Yeah.
People that Corbuto mightn't quite understand that.
Yeah. I think we've got that on video somewhere, so I might have to bring that out again. But I remember.
I hope I lost it when my last computer crashed.
Oh, okay.
So, look and see if you can find it. I wouldn't.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find it. I remember you whipped me with that bow, and I had a massive welt.
It was a tiny little pink line.
Oh, it was huge. It was half the size of my face. And then I had to go there and compete. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, Dad. There's not many father and son karate guys out there as obsessed or addicted to karate as you and I have been. But yeah, we'll have to do another discussion at some stage. Yeah,
for sure.
All
right, son.
Thanks, guys. And if you have any questions, just leave a comment below, or just shoot me through an email, australiankarateacademy@gmail.com. You can friend Dad Bob McMahon on Facebook as well. Sure, he'll answer any questions that you've got. Alrighty, thanks, guys. See you later.